Okay.
Okay, there
And
we go. Okay, excellent.
yeah. So then we're gonna live stream to Facebook.
Here's my Zoom. Okay. Okay. Okay, let me click OK. There we are.
See, we're professionals.
I know.
I don't do live on my podcast. I record them all.
It's smart. I don't know. It's so funny because I don't know how, like Gina and I just developed this format and we're like, so far it's been working out okay. But that's the
Yeah.
wonderful thing about stuff like this is that you can, however you want to do it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We are so excited to have you here tonight. We have the wonderful, and Darla, I hope I pronounced your last name right. Darla Ridilla?
Close, Radilla.
Ridilla. All right. See,
Radilla.
never be a good grade school teacher because I can't pronounce names really well. But anyways, we are so excited to have her here with us today. She is through High Value Women, and she's a somatic trauma informed coach. So, so we're going to learn a lot from her. I'm going to go ahead and read your bio here, Darla,
Sure.
so we can let people know who you are. So Darla is a certified, I just said that, somatic trauma informed coach with lived experience in narcissistic abuse. Her healing journey from trauma and narcissist relationships has inspired her to help others with similar experiences. During one-on-one coaching sessions, she focuses on the nervous system to work through past trauma and take back your personal power, which is huge. And yeah, we're very excited to have you here, Darla. So welcome to the show.
So good to be here.
So cool. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of like
Mhm.
what was your pivotal discovery that you made when you were in your 50s and like what kind of like what's your story and what led you to doing what you're doing now to help other people in our world?
I think my pivotal discovery was really about a year and a half ago. And I read the book Single on Purpose by John Kim. I don't know if you're familiar with The Angry Therapist, but he's phenomenal. And in this book, it focuses not on the Pollyanna love yourself, it focuses on who are you? Do you know who you are? And I realized, no, I do not. I don't. So how can I love someone I don't know? And so that was a game changer for me to really get straight, take myself out on a date weekly. And when I start dating again, I want to continue to do that because I want to continue to invest in myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Love that. Love
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So you, so to speak, got your superhero cape by learning to love you.
Yeah, and I actually kind of since we originally connected, I rebranded because I realized that that self-love piece is
Mhm.
really the crux of it. If we have a good relationship with ourselves, then we can have good relationships with ourselves, with others. And
Yes.
so while I still work with trauma and narcissistic abuse, because on the back end, all of the things that happen to us really are driving our behaviors, our decisions in the future.
Yes.
And having that healing within ourselves is really what I focus on now with these ladies. You know, the benefit is they're going to have better relationships.
Yeah.
But
I love that. The self-love. I don't think women in particular, especially in our age group, because we've taken care of people, we take
yeah,
care of our kids, or husbands, or aging parents, really don't understand that self-love is not selfish, how important it is to take care of yourself. I learned that when I turned 49, how important self-love. And that's a lot of work.
yeah,
Learning to love yourself.
yeah.
That's a hard, and I think it's Darla, if you could let us know, like even how to start doing that, because in the beginning, when I was working on the self-love, it's really hard to get out of the habit of thinking it was selfish,
Mhm.
you know, and really focusing on yourself and developing yourself. So how do you even start getting out of the belief that that is like a shameful thing to do, is to love yourself? Because, you know, people are like, but
Selfish.
how do you start getting out of the belief of that it's selfish and start
Mhm.
learning to love yourself?
Yeah, you bring up such an important point because as women, we give and give and give.
Yeah.
And there is this feeling like if I give to myself, one thing, there's a couple things that come to mind. One is, especially as we get older, we can't give from an empty cup. So
Right.
if we want to be able to give to others, we really have to start considering giving to ourselves. The other thing is that maybe just I recommend women just start investing in themselves. Do something small, start
Mhm.
small,
Yeah.
and do something for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes a day, and then gradually increase that. Because I think any new habit or anything we take on, if we try like the gym, I'm going to work out 2 hours a day, you're not going to stick with it. Start
Yeah.
with a 5 minute thing. And yes, those thoughts are going to come up. But if you can just remind yourself, I enjoy giving so much. So in order for me to give, I have to give to myself.
Yeah. And we use that, and I used that analogy as a, you know, as a flight attendant even, you know, I had the moment like, oh my God, like you got to put your mask on first before you can help anybody
Yes.
else. Because if you're not okay, you can't help anyone else be okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's really hard, because I'm a social worker by trade during the day, and then I'm also a writer, but I work with caregivers and who are doing this caregiving role full time, right? And so
Hmm.
trying to encourage them to take those little moments, even if it's to take a little nap or take a little
Yeah.
walk, plant one of their plants in the yard. So that's amazing. So tell us, so you said you've made a shift with your brand
Hmm. Yeah.
into this new piece.
Yeah. So self-love coach. So basically,
Mhm.
I help women to fall back in love with themselves so they
Okay.
can attract that dream partner.
Oh,
That's the focus.
love that
Yeah.
so much. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been my process and it's an
Mhm.
ongoing process. There is no magic wand. It's not like,
Mhm.
oh, I love myself. Everything is perfect. I have to remind myself too. I mean, we were just talking about how I
Mhm.
just moved and that 2 weeks before, because it was very quick, it was within a few weeks I pulled it off. And I was exhausted. I was trying to do podcasts, I was trying to run my business, trying to pack. And I had to take naps. And there was this feeling of guilt like, oh, I have not answered emails for a week. What am I doing? And
Mhm.
then I realized I am so tired. What's the use of answering this email? Because my mind is, first of all, my heart isn't in it right now. And
Right.
I'm probably not going to answer it in the best way I could if I just take some time
Yeah.
and rejuvenate.
Yeah.
Love that.
Do you, as a self-love coach, I just love that so much. I think it's so important. I really do. And I, you know, I realize that we always circle back to self-love. Always
Hmm.
circle back to self-love. You know, when things are not going right, always back to self-love kind of a thing. And do you, you know, working with you know, as a coach, does that look different for everybody? Like, does everybody have their particular, like you say, you go on a date with yourself, the self-love and taking care of yourself, it's different for everybody, or are there some like basic core things for you to do? Like, you know, make sure you spend time on what you want to do. So let us know, like, what does that look like in general for like, for women, or what do you suggest at least to start out with?
You know, there are basic core things like find something that you enjoy and try to invest in that. I would say at least once a week. And here's where the difference comes in. We all have different responsibilities. I'm
Mhm.
single, so I have more time than the average person. Well, I work a lot. That's also because I choose it. I don't have anyone else to take care of. My daughter's grown and has her own child. And but there are people who are either raising children or what's happening in our generation is parents are coming home and staying with us. So there
Mhm.
are people who have a lot less time. So the basics would be start with one thing that you can invest in at least once a week, say 30 minutes. Let's say 30 minutes. Let's give it this is
Yes.
what I'm going to do. If you can journal too, because there's a lot of emotions that come up with as we age, dealing with that. I have to say myself, I look in the mirror and I'm like, what is happening? I didn't sign up for this. And
Mhm.
it can be distressing. Take time for journaling. I am so big into personal development. And what I do is my multitask. Every morning I listen to a podcast while I'm getting ready, putting my makeup on. It's only for 15 minutes a day, but it's more than I would have had if I didn't do it at all.
Mhm.
And then I always have an audiobook running in my car. And right now I'm listening to the Let Them theory by
Yes,
Mel
yes,
Robbins. Yeah,
yes,
which I love.
Yeah,
totally, yeah.
Right. So I'm investing in myself while I'm still getting my daily routine done.
that's amazing.
Mhm.
Darla, you had mentioned in your form that you sent to us about declaring for yourself in 2024 that if something is not, that was going to be your year of joy. And if something did not bring you joy
Mm.
in your
Hmm.
life, it's out.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a mantra that you use with the women that you meet with as well?
I haven't with them. This was just a
Mhm.
personal decision that came from reading that book
Yeah,
that I realized I turned 55 last year and I
yeah,
realized my life was not where I wanted it to be. I would
yeah.
say for women, I do believe in themes. I think they actually kind of keep you focused a little bit. So they could find a theme, whether that's the year of joy.
Mhm.
Um, find yeah, whether that is I'm going to read a personal development book every day this year or listen to one while I'm walking or something.
Yes.
Find that theme. And I will tell you that theme evolved because 2024 was getting rid of everything I didn't want, including my
Mhm.
job. And 25 evolved into now I have clarity on what I do want. So this is the year of yes.
Mm,
Love
mhm.
that.
Yes,
It really shifted, and I didn't expect that.
yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mhm.
Well, and that's just it. When you say that, I hear like a book coming out of you
Yeah,
Eventually, I would love
totally.
that.
about
Well, there
about that
is
the themes,
Uh-huh.
and like
so
how
Shonda Rhimes actually is
yeah,
where I got that idea. If you're familiar with her book, The Year of Yes, I read it a
Mhm.
couple of years ago, and it's similar to what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I kind of got that idea from her that
yeah,
she was not saying, and it was the same thing. She ended a relationship because he wanted to get married. She didn't. She loved him dearly, but it was never going to work, and she knew that.
yeah.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And
Wow.
she listened to her own guidance, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's a big thing is our intuition. I've really been doing that more. And I'm working with an intuitive coach who's also helping with that. She does theta
Wow.
healing. I don't exactly know how it works, but I know it's working. But alignment, she's really
Yes.
big about, and this is why I shifted what I do, because I wanted to be in alignment with things that I was excited about, that I felt good
Mm.
about. And I think as we get older, let's be honest, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
It just is. And we're aware of it.
Mhm. Yeah. I love how you said alignment. I really do. And using your intuition. I feel if we just sit quietly and really listen to our intuition instead of listening to what other people and their opinions are telling us, and
Mhm.
and just really sit clearly and listen to what your intuition says. I mean, that's the thing that really guides you is your intuition.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, how I decided to move. So this moving to Colorado was something that was in the background, and that was something I was going to do in a couple of years. But I went through a really tough breakup in November, and I spent 2 months alone. And as an extrovert, that's unusual.
Yeah.
But I needed that. And then in January, I went camping for 3 days and I turned my phone off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that quiet moment. And I realized, why am I stressing about whether or not I'm going to renew my lease in April? Don't renew it. And
Mm-hmm.
a week later, I was in Durango looking for apartments. Like,
Wow.
I acted immediately. But it was those 3 days of totally unplugging, because sometimes I'm working 14-hour days and I'm just thinking all day long, which is why I try to go camping once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that can totally cloud your thoughts,
Yeah.
everything,
Yes.
Yeah.
your fears and whatever. It can feed all of that. That's
Mhm.
amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you
Yeah.
use a camper or did you camp in a tent?
I was in a tent. So I lived at a Class A motorhome for over a year.
Yeah.
And I was so over that, to be honest. I'd rather be in a tent
Love it.
because the motorhomes are like money pits. And it was
Really?
Yeah.
so I'm in a tent.
Well, and I love that number one that you're in a tent. For me, like tenting, I get so cold, it's crazy, but it's
Yeah.
so the one thing that I've loved about that is you're out in nature
Mm-hmm.
and there's a grounding portion to that as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There is. I just didn't expect Phoenix to be 40 degrees at night. I was like, I thought it would be going to be
Oh,
warmer.
Everybody's
yeah,
pretty surprised about. Yeah.
heard it's
Yeah.
cold. It was
Yeah.
cold. Yeah, that's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
That you survived it, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I took lots of blankets, but but it was colder than I realized, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
The days were 60, 65. That was fine. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there is that nature. And I find that, like, this time it was with cactus, but I find that when I would go on mountain camping trips or be by water, it was even more effective because there is
Yeah.
something cleansing about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how you said that too, something cleansing. Now, I was reading your bio and
Mhm.
talking about the history of pretty much like how you got here,
Yeah.
surviving trauma and narcissistic abuse. And it's kind of interesting because things that I've read and being like, let's say being an empath, people tend to kind of lean towards this empath and narcissistic relationship. It's
Yes.
a very magnetic relationship.
Mhm.
And when you said like being by water, it like people who are empaths tend to like to be near things that are very grounding. It
Mhm.
makes them feel very safe. Like, I'm an empath as well, and I love being near mountains or by water. There's something very safe, or trees. It's very safe. It's very grounding. You almost feel like the earth hugging you,
Yeah.
and telling you, it's gonna be okay. And but I love how you were talking about that. But do you find like are you familiar with like the whole narcissistic empath relationship? And tell us about
Very
your
much.
experience, of what got you here through the trauma and through the narcissistic abuse, if you don't mind telling us that.
No, not at all. So it started in childhood, of course.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a very tumultuous, abusive home. My parents did not have a healthy relationship. I did not have a good relationship with my father. He was very unpredictable. I'm pretty
Mhm.
certain he was bipolar. So I never knew what version of dad was going to show up when he got home. And so you develop this hypervigilance, like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. Dad's coming home. Is he gonna like break dishes tonight, or is he going to be just chill and have a beer in front of the TV? And we
Yes.
did never know. And so
Right.
that, in a strange way, hypervigilance became my comfort zone. And so, and because I did not have that healthy relationship with him,
Mhm.
and my subconscious knew that was a void. That's something I didn't get from my childhood. So I sought it out in men. So whether they were abusive, narcissistic, or just emotionally unavailable,
Yes.
every relationship I've had, to be honest, so far has had some form of emotional unavailability. And so 20 years ago, I met a charming man who was very handsome and he swept me off my feet. I knew nothing about narcissism. I had no idea how badly I was being played. And um, he was so good at what he did. I was still married to my first husband, my daughter's father, and I got involved with him, which is not who I am before or after. I'm not a cheater. And he just got my brain so wrapped up that that's what I did. And it
Yeah.
started a 10-year relationship and 6-year marriage. And narcissistic abuse is hard to spot, particularly if they're really good at it. In that love bombing stage too, I tend to be in the moment, and that's something I'm working on as I re-enter the dating world, is being a little bit more grounded about what I'm doing and checking in with myself. But I didn't know these things. I wanted to be rescued. I was codependent. And this man comes in on the white horse and says, I'm
Yes.
here, you know. Um, but it was a very insidious type of abuse because you don't know what's happening. I was very strong-willed, successful in my career, financially independent, and he destroyed all of that.
Mm.
Well, 99%, let's say, because 10 years later, I call it the drip effect. So that rock that's in the river, you don't see it on a daily basis eroding from that water rushing past it. But go back 10 years later, it's either not there or it is severely eroded. And I posted a picture of me at the Grand Canyon recently and said, this is a perfect example of what narcissistic abuse looks like. But when you heal, you become something beautiful amid the destruction, right?
Yes.
And so that's what happened to me because he controlled everything. He told me what I could think, what I could say. I was told I was not allowed to discuss our relationship outside of the house. And he told me what to wear, what my hair was supposed to look like.
Mhm.
It was crazy, absolutely crazy. And
Mhm.
people on the outside saw how in love we were, but they didn't see the monster when the door shut. The
Yeah.
days his eyes turned black. And that was freaky
Wow.
when that happened.
Wow.
Um, and so apparently it's a physical thing. They get so filled with rage, their pupils fully dilate. I thought I was hallucinating when I saw it, but it's a thing.
I did not know.
Wow.
So, and I did not know till a year after I left that I was in an abusive relationship. I was completely trauma bonded.
Yeah.
And, so he was such an amazing person in the beginning, but as he started to move away from that, he never went completely back. But I was so desperate to get that version of him back. I
Mhm.
was like a little child trying
Yes.
to get the candy back from mom that snatched it away from me. And
Mhm.
so when I look at pictures of myself at the end, I'm like, who is that person? I don't know her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that actually, while it was the worst experience of my life, and then I almost took my life in 2013, that was the gauntlet for me. Like that was probably the most pivotal moment in my life is when I decided I wasn't gonna take my life because he was
Yeah.
telling everyone I was crazy. Where
So
was
there
I
was
gonna
the
be?
yeah. Oh, I'm
Go
so
ahead.
sorry. So there was the gaslighting then, and
So an example of this
yeah.
is and the gaslighting is, you probably know that it's based on that movie, the Gaslight or something like that, an old black
Mhm.
and white where the guy would turn the
Yes.
lights on and off. And he would do similar things. I am very organized and I would put my keys in a specific place.
Mhm.
I'd go to leave for work, the keys weren't there.
Mhm.
And I'm flipping out and I'm way too hard on myself, especially back then. And I
Mhm.
was like berating myself and like yelling and, oh my God, I'm so stupid. What have I done? And I'm running around the house because now I'm late for work. Now I'm freaked out. And when I was out of the room, he would put the keys right back where they were to begin with. And then
Wow.
I come back and be like, what the hell? What is this? And why are these keys here? And then he would call me crazy. See, I told you you were crazy. See, I told you. And gaslighting is that they will do something to make you react and then punish you for the reaction.
And these are intentions, like with a narcissist, I mean, I think sometimes people might use the term, I don't want to say loosely, when they're describing maybe some relationships, unless someone is really a narcissist, like you
Yeah.
just described, who intentionally tries to make you think you're nuts, while
Yes.
meanwhile is very calm and can hold up that front of being normal when they're not.
Yes.
So
That
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 is,
is because
yeah, go ahead, continue.
yeah, no, because that term that label is thrown around a lot.
Yes.
And just because you're a jerk doesn't make you a narcissist. It's a pattern of behavior. It's a
Yes.
pattern of lack of accountability. It is downright, outright manipulation. Like I've dated a couple of dismissive avoidance. Some of their behaviors are very similar, but the difference is the intent. They are
Yes.
actually not meaning to hurt you. They do just as badly, but it's actually a coping mechanism. They
Yeah.
aren't saying from the get-go, I'm going to manipulate this woman, take all her money, break her down, and make her just a shred of what she is. And initially they show up the way they want to show up. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the difference. It's intentional. It's actually in fact, most of them are highly intelligent. You look
Yes.
at like Ted Bundy, I
Yeah.
mean, they're intelligent. And it's scary. And what they do is they listen because as women, we talk a lot and then we give them a lot of information up front and then they use it
Mm.
as weapons later
Mhm.
on.
That's why they have such a good memory too.
They do.
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes you'd be like, how do they I can't even remember what I said to who I said. But when you encounter a true narcissist, they will pull things out of the hat that are years and years and years old
Hmm.
to use it against you.
Or remember things that never happened. I had
Yeah.
that too. Like
Yeah.
that
Or
never
twisted
happened. I have
versions
no
of yeah.
idea what you're talking about.
Wow. Yeah.
What world are you in?
Yes, yes. But I feel like sometimes there's, in those kinds of situations or relationships, um, women, sometimes, or even men, with narcissistic
Mhm,
women, you
mhm.
just don't see it. You don't see it right away. And then like you said, like he presented himself and everything that you wanted. That night on, in the shining armor on that white horse, and it's like it was almost a too good to be true kind of a thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, took me to Italy, proposed to me at the top of Pikes Peak. I
Wow.
mean, all this like, oh my God, that's so romantic. But it's also about show. So everything is an act.
Mhm.
And they want the outside world to see them. They're usually very charismatic, often in positions of power or community pillars. And that's because they
Yes.
want to be seen as, look at me.
Mhm.
I have done all of this and
Mhm.
I'm so wonderful.
Yes. Yes, yes. Very scary. And
Mhm.
now as far as narcissists go, that's a very hard mental condition to treat because there's no self-awareness. You know how
Yeah, it's not treatable.
correct.
Yeah.
Because they just no, I totally know what you mean. Yeah, like they just it's not treatable because there's no self-awareness of
No.
yeah, it's really it's really creepy actually. But
It is creepy. Yeah.
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 So how did you like so share with us like what was that moment where you're like, man, I got to get out of this and then like you said, those what you went through got you to actually where you are today, helping other
Yeah, it
women, which
did.
is amazing. But
Yeah.
when was that moment that you were like, I got to get out of here and this is what's happening?
Ironically, he asked for a divorce out of nowhere. We were getting, and there was the love bomb right to the discard. So we were
Mhm.
getting along really, really well. We weren't fighting. And then one day, just randomly, he was acting very strange the whole day. And I was like, what is wrong? Oh, nothing. And I'm like, no, something's wrong. Like I can
Mm.
feel something is off. And finally, like 11 o'clock at night, he's like, I just don't know the line between getting a divorce or tolerating your behavior. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
So he asked for a divorce.
Wow.
I'm devastated. Like I'm crying. I can't stop crying for like a whole day. I am totally at that point, I think blindsided because I
Yeah.
didn't see all this stuff coming. And then 2 days later, he's like, "Oh, well, we have 2 years left on the rental lease. So what are we going to do?" And he tries to backtrack and gets me to stay. There's that push pull, the
Mm.
trauma bonding.
Yes.
And it was in that moment, I think the shift began. I had a whole can of worms to deal with later, but there was this something in me, that little girl, when my dad would be abusive to me and my mom would stay out of the room on purpose and not defend me, and
Yeah.
I had to punch my dad on my own, that little girl rose up and said, absolutely not. You don't want me here? I'm leaving. And so I got an apartment and I left. But when I left, I didn't know I was trauma bonded. So it's an addiction.
Yes.
And then now they've taken away my drug. And for, oh my gosh, that's how I ended up progressing to that deep depression and suicidal ideation. I had no idea that was coming.
Mm.
Absolutely none. But that moment when I decided I didn't know how to live, but I was going to, that's when our higher power, we surrender the higher
Mhm.
power. I brought in a counselor. She came into my life. I was going to a spiritual center. I got rid of almost all of my friends, maybe 4 or 5 women that I felt like were pillars of strength because
Yes.
I needed them. And my counselor is like, this isn't love. This is abuse. Do you understand this? And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, no. Because I was still having dinners with him. I had Stockholm syndrome. I was still texting him every day. I couldn't stay away from him. I couldn't stop. And so finally, I had an amazing friend who said, enough of this. If you feel like you need to contact him, I don't care what time of day or night, you call me, you text me.
Yeah.
And then I ended up moving. I left Denver and moved to Santa Fe. And I, at that point, was being stalked. This is when I stopped. I went no contact. I wanted him to stay away from me. I was
Yes.
starting to realize I read The Gaslight Effect
Yeah.
and by Robert Stern. And when she described my everyday life to a T, I was like, oh my gosh, something's going on here.
Yeah.
And he started to infiltrate. I started to build a new life outside of him, and he infiltrated every area and very sneaky. Like I joined a networking group, and he was like, "Oh, I'm starting a business too." And then he would show up, and me not understanding what was really happening, I gave him
Mm.
the information, not realizing what he was going to do with it.
Yes. Yeah.
So I left and moved, in that physical space. I think first of all helped because while I had gone no contact and was going to stick with it, I also was afraid I wouldn't stick with it because it was
Mhm.
hard.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like they get you trapped into this
Mhm.
crazy cycle. Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. What would you say for any listeners? Because there's probably a lot of women in these types of relationships,
Yes.
and maybe they're considering getting out. What would be your best advice to them?
First, don't tell them. No matter whether they're dangerous physically or not, do
Mhm.
not tell them. Because if you do, they're going to convince you with their little manipulation to
Ugh.
not leave. Oh, I've changed. Oh, I'll go to therapy. And don't ever go to a therapist with a narcissist. I've
Oh my
done it.
goodness.
It's the worst experience ever because they turn the therapist against you. And that's
Oh,
exactly what happened to me in another relationship that I was in. That's the first thing. The other thing is we have to, if if there's violent tendencies or you suspect there might be, because some of them are,
Mhm.
you've got to be real careful.
Mhm.
If you've got a shelter that you can go to, line that up. Tell friends. Um, I think there's a statistic out there that says that the most murders in abusive relationships happen in like the first 7 to 10 days.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I would be very careful. The other thing is like, so I'm going to give you 2 examples of things that shocked the hell out of me. The first one, my first narcissist, when I left and I went no contact, through our relationship, he had been upset with me because I was texting him. He wouldn't respond. And so my anxious attachment style came out like, ugh, and I started like repetitively texting and calling so he would
Mhm.
respond. And then he was always getting on my case about that. But guess what he did the first day I went no contact and I stopped responding? I got 5 texts in an hour. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And that shocked me because, and then it shocked me when I started to feel very physically unsafe. And then this last narcissistic relationship I was in about a year that I got out 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, a week after I kicked him out, he broke into my apartment. And
Mm.
it's, I wouldn't, he never showed any violent tendencies during that relationship.
Mhm.
And he continued to harass and hoover me till I left
Mm.
Arizona a week ago. Or,
Wow.
I don't know
Wow.
what's under the hood. While I never saw violence, when someone does that, and while I have evidence, no proof, now I have cameras in my home, but no one could have gotten past the 100-pound dog, but someone who knew him. and it was evidence of a break-in.
Yeah.
And so be careful when you leave,
Yes.
really keep these things in mind that there might be something more under that lid. I would say have someone there, have somewhere to go.
There you are. Okay.
And if
Okay.
you, like me, I had to, I was willing to be on the streets if I had to be.
Yes. Darla, let me ask you. So, going to like a high value, back to like high value woman, the
Mhm.
title, which is, I really, I love the title. And I've done like a lot of inner work with that kind of stuff too. I had a traumatic childhood as well. And I'm a predictable father as well. So I understand, like, you're like, I heard his brakes squeak when he got home, and we're like, what version of dad we were gonna get, and so, but do you, one of the things that I came to the conclusion was that you're always going to attract what you believe you deserve, in a
Yeah.
sense. So the self-love work, I mean, for you realizing this at this age, and I realized it at the age of 49. I mean, I have a wonderful husband, but I mean, I saw, behaviors that, like, I've had that didn't make me, that made me not deal with things but I'm an
Mhm.
empath, so I'd be hypersensitive, and if he wasn't in a good mood, I was like, what's going on, are you okay? And
Mhm.
but if I would have known, when we don't know until maybe later we get that epiphany, but if I would have known it, or had some awareness that I had value or purpose or was worthy just as much as anybody else out there, whether they had a wonderful, beautiful family setting, or the upbringing that I had, I was worthy just as much as they were to have a beautiful life, to value
Yeah.
myself and to love myself, before I went further into life, and I don't want to say making mistakes, but just being aware and paying attention of the warning signs that were coming.
Mhm.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It makes perfect sense. So our inner self-worth um, does affect what we tolerate and what we attract in our lives. Now, in the dating world, I am still going to see men who just aren't for me, that they're, maybe not narcissistic, but they're just abusive or they're emotionally unavailable.
Mhm.
But the difference is in the past, because I was codependent and afraid to be alone, I'd be like, oh, you brush it under the rug. Because my value in myself,
Mhm.
I really about a year ago, I started to date very differently because the value had increased. I
Yes.
deserve to be loved in a healthy way. I
Yes.
deserve to learn what healthy relationships look like.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to be alone till that shows up. I had two short relationships last year. I've never had relationships 2 months, both of them 2.5 months, never. And it
Mhm.
was because neither of them were bad people, but I realized they weren't what I was looking for and they weren't willing to do the work to become that person.
Mhm.
And so, because I have value, I said, this isn't working for me and I need to leave. And I couldn't have done that even 2 years ago. Well,
Yeah.
I did walk away from that narcissistic relationship. It took me a year.
Mhm.
And I put up with a lot of stuff that today I wouldn't. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, there's this. I mean, this is why I listen to personal development every day because there's a lot of demons I'm still overcoming and will
Mhm.
continue to do so.
Yes.
And so as my standards and my values increase,
Mhm.
the other thing is too, is I was told my whole life, you're too big, you're too much, your standards are too high. And I realized, no, they're too low.
Mm.
And yeah, I do have very high standards and very
Mhm.
specific things I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Yes, that does mean that that's going to make a smaller pool of people around me, whether that's friendships. That goes for friendships too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But I deserve what I'm looking for. And I
Absolutely.
didn't get that 2 years ago.
Well, and I think you hit it on the head just a little bit ago, you feel time creeping, breathing down your neck, right?
Yes,
Especially
it
now.
does.
Are you gonna,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do with that? What are you gonna do with that time? And I think we realize that as we get older. I don't know if I would have given advice to my younger self to say, pay attention, tap into your intuition, that I would have even listened, because at
Right.
that time in our lives, we've got all the time in the world, right? We're not thinking of, our own mortality. So,
Mhm.
um, I think it's, yeah, and we're all like works in process,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Constantly, no matter what it is that you've dealt with, whatever trauma it has been.
Mhm.
But I think the key piece that you hit there was that you're doing the work. It takes work, no matter what you do in life.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Like diet and exercise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, like
Commitment.
diet and
Sure.
exercise. Yeah, you have to, and it's so funny how you were saying we're talking about that because I have a few friends that I talk to, and like as far as like relationship advice or marital advice or whatever, and I'm like, you have to do the work, especially if Darla, like how we grew up too. It just maybe a little bit more homework for us,
Right.
But I have to remember myself when I get into a certain state of like, maybe, reverting back, not all the way back, but I like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe that isn't, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm like, no, 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 no. Yeah, it's affirming. Like I do a lot of affirmations, meditations. Tell my just write that stuff down, write your affirmations down. You are worthy. You deserve everything just like anybody else does. But you have to do the work. You have to continually, exercise, eat right, be in nature and do the inner work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exercise is a great example
Yeah.
because when we first start, we get really sore muscles. It's actually
Mhm.
harder in the beginning, and I think
Yes.
healing goes the same way.
Yes.
And yes, like I went to my dance class Monday, and I was a little bit sore, but it goes away quicker.
Yeah.
My body recovers faster, and so I think that's too. We bounce back with healing as well. And if we don't invest in that, what happens? We gain weight. We feel bad
Mhm.
about ourselves. We
Yes.
have bad health, and we have to take that time of investment, but we
Mhm.
feel better. And when I think about where I was 10 years ago, I would never go back to that. And I would do the work all over again because now that I'm on the other side of it,
Yes.
it's so worth it.
Yes.
And I have to remind
Absolutely.
myself when something new comes up,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, and it's so important because no matter which side of the pendulum you swing,
Mhm.
Mhm.
if you're swinging in that you're not doing the work, the important work that's positive, that's bringing positivity to your life and learning and
Mhm.
development, you're just sinking back in old habits, right? So it's
Right.
all about
Mhm.
habits too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And practicing keeps you into those good habits.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, just yesterday I had a blowout for about 30 minutes because the UPS delivered I had a very large area rug that they delivered to the office 2 buildings down in my apartment complex. And I had to
Oh.
carry it back and I'm like mumbling. And then I tried to call him on the phone. And because I'm stressed, I didn't handle that as well, and I'm, like, literally cussing at the recording, the AI, like, "You're so good," and then I had to remind myself, "Okay, I understand you're angry, but this is a little bit much."
And
Because I used to be a super angry person all the time, and
yes.
so a little bit of that showed up just yesterday, like, "Oh, ooh," after, I was like, "Settle down."
That's right. You give yourself grace. I think we should all give ourselves
Uh-huh.
some grace
Right?
because you've come so far. It's
Right.
funny because my husband makes fun of me. because I tell everybody, it's mentioned several times on our podcast. I had like a major spiritual awakening in 2019. We're doing the inner work, shadow work, things I forgot as a childhood came up, and meditation. My life changed like 180 degrees, so, I got into like energy work and all of this stuff. And then, sometimes, we backslide. And, if I say something that, a couple of swear words come out, or I'm angry about something, and then my husband will be like, oh, well, who's enlightened now? Meanwhile, there's a shelf full of Eckhart Tolle's, Carl Jung's,
Right.
and he's like,
Right.
oh, maybe we're not so enlightened, are we? I'm like, hey, you know what? I go, we all have our moments. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, but it
Yeah.
means now, like you did, like you stopped yourself and you looked at yourself like, who's swearing into the phone like this?
That lady can't hear you. She doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Just all the people that know the work I'm doing, you can see me now. They would think I'm a fink.
Right.
But it's great to hear this, because it just means that you're normal.
Right.
It just means you're normal.
Right. I'm not perfect. And I
No one's
don't, I mean, in my own podcast, I talk about the things that I do because
Yes.
I don't want to appear as this like guru. It's
Yeah.
not like that at all. I
Correct.
have backslides. I have moments where I do revert back. So
Absolutely.
It was actually really funny. And I'll tell you a little bit the story. I started my HRTs, and the pharmacy made a mistake about, like, I just like ready to start my HRTs for menopause. I'm like, I'm going to feel better. I can't wait. And we drove through the drive-through pharmacy. And anyway, I started yelling at the pharmacist. My husband's like, wait, he's in the passenger seat. He's like, please ignore her. Ignore her. I don't know what's wrong with her. I was so mad that they weren't getting it right, and
yeah.
I looked like just some crazy woman screaming for my hormones, embarrassing
her
my
back.
husband, who was like, the pharmacist was looking at me like I was nuts, and my husband was like trying to like wave at him like, please drive. It's like he was telling me, just drive away. And then he's like, they have you on camera. They're gonna come to the house and get you. It's like, but it's just, life. It's just life, and
It is. It is.
I think it's important to be able to look back on those moments, right? They're
Yeah.
actually kind of funny if you look back,
Right.
on those, hopefully the pharmacist has recovered, and all of
Oh, he's
that.
super nice to me now.
What's that?
He's very
afraid of
nice
you.
to me now. I drive up there. Hello, Mrs. Therese.
Did you take your pill today?
I know. Runs in the back, brings the bag out really fast. And I'm driving away. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it is. You're right, Jana. It's funny looking back at it now, and Darla, like you too. It's pretty funny looking back at it now, swearing. It's like, it's not every day. It's not habitual. It's not something,
Right.
I mean, it would have been every day for old me, but new me, sometimes old me
Right.
breaks through sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I agree. Like I just had, well, maybe it was you, Debbie, that said, "Are you still doing your gratitude?" Everything stinks in life. Are you still doing your gratitude?
You still doing your gratitude, right? That's the first thing. It's funny. That's the first thing I tell everybody, even my husband. He comes home from work. Oh, these, bleepity bleep bleep. Are you doing your gratitudes? Have you done them this morning? Because I did them in my head. Did you write them down? Because there's an energy to writing them down. And he's like, shut up.
Right.
He's like, I'd be really grateful if you shut up.
Well, at least he's grateful for something.
I go, there's number one.
Oh my gosh. This
Funny.
has been such a great chat, Darla. I absolutely
Yes.
I don't want to say I love your journey, because I am, it's really unfortunate that you had to go through those things. But like you said, like it helped you to grow as a person
Yeah.
and learn more about you. So I think that any experiences we go through in life help us to do that. Just, end up, if we listen, can be real good self-discovery
Yes.
pieces. So if people want to learn more about you, or if they want to reach out to you for your services, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Yes. So everything's on my website, and that's
Okay.
highvaluewoman.info. I've got my blog, my podcast. I am creating a mastermind of 2 groups of 10 women only, which I'm super excited about.
Oh,
It's going to
it's
start in a
amazing.
month. And so I'm at the stage right now where I'm actually talking to ladies like, what is it you would like to see out of this mastermind? And I'm going to have a questionnaire because I wanted this to be a really cohesive. This isn't just about me supporting them. What I want these women to do is to lift each other up. I want
Yes.
this a community of women that are ready to do the work. So I'm super excited. My website has all that. I have all my social media, the
Great.
Facebook, Instagram, all those usual
Yes.
things.
Yeah, yeah. And
Amazing.
as always, we share all the links that you provided. So,
Okay.
so that way, listeners, if you're tuning in now, or if you tuned in, we had Anna check in. But if you're tuning in later, all the links will be on there. So if you
Yeah.
want to reach out to Darla, if you're dealing with a situation like that and you just really want to grow and to flourish in life, this is your chance.
Mhm.
Yep.
Darla, thank you so much for
Yes.
sharing your story with us and bringing awareness to, the trauma and abuse that you've been through, your journey, and helping other women. I mean, we're so happy to have you today, and we really do appreciate you.
Well, thank you. It was a joy to be here. The laughter is much needed. So thank you.
Good, good, good.
That's great. Yeah.
Laughter is great medicine.
We
You
love
It
to
is.
laugh.
know, yeah. And you know what's funny? Even sometimes, like even in the most worst or traumatic things, and I know things have been bad or whatever you want to, you can find some humor somewhere. You know,
Hmm.
you can, and it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
So good
We're-
luck with everything, and we're gonna, like Gina said, post all the links and everything, and
Yeah.
please keep
Awesome.
in touch with us too.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. I'm stretching out the screen. Come on. Where's my recording button?
Your skin
Ladies,
looks
where is it?
fabulous, Gina.
Talk amongst yourselves.
You've
I
got fabulous looking skin there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Where is my recording button? All right. Well, I'm just going to stop the
I
Facebook
have
thing.
sunburn. I was in Punta Cana 2 days ago.
Oh, oh, it sounds amazing.
Oh my God. I had so much fun. But
Oh.
it was my overnight. So I was like, I'm a flight attendant, so that was my